We're going to turn a little bit away from software and techie stuff now, and I'm going to introduce our associate Kiki who joins us today from Washington, DC. And we've been talking to Kiki a couple of times recently about how to look really professional on screen. And in fact, you were quoted, Kiki, in the New York Times, I think it was last week, on this exact subject of how to look professional. I have to tell you a funny story that's happened since the last time we spoke, and it got media coverage here in the UK this week. We have a very famous lady who does a lot of tips for people on how to look good and how to dress, and she's run television programs and is very high profile. And yesterday she was doing a broadcast from her bathroom about how to apply your makeup, and her partner got out of the shower behind her. What's even more funny is that he is actually one of the two Saatchi brothers that established the Saatchi and Saatchi advertising agency. So he's not unfamous. He's even more famous today, as are parts of his anatomy.
Right, infamous maybe, yes.
So hi, Kiki, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi.
Would you like to introduce yourself? So tell us a little bit about how you are so good at presenting yourself on screen.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy that I have a chance to talk about this because, as you know, I focus a lot on digital communications, figuring out ways where I can better connect with other people using all kinds of different tools and channels. And in the past, until very recently, I didn't share this with a lot of people. In the past, I would moonlight as a makeup artist. And so lately, some of the things that I learned related to how to show up best on video have become very helpful in combining that with the nonverbal visual cues that we give to people when we're trying to connect, along with the regular cues that we have in communications, like how we sound and how we communicate through writing. And so this is a time in history when all of those pieces are coming together. And what I've found is that a lot of people are focusing on maybe the superficial part of how we show up on camera, which is important. We don't want to look sweaty. We don't want to look shiny. We don't want to look like we're in the witness protection program or anything like that. But what's more important is how are we making the people on the other side of the camera feel? How are we making people feel when we meet with them online? And I think that that is the most important part about this whole discussion and how we show up professionally on video.
Right. Because trust in who you're talking to is, of course, really important, isn't it? It's difficult perhaps to convey that when you're just talking little tiny screen to little tiny screen.
It is. One of the most important ways that we learn as human beings is by our visual cues. And it's very important that we not underplay how important that is, because this is the way we've evolved as human beings, as a human species. We were never the largest, we were never the strongest, but the way that we were able to survive and thrive was by building relationships. And we wouldn't be able to survive and thrive if we built relationships that we couldn't trust, right? Because if we built the wrong relationship, that person may just throw us in front of the tiger instead of helping us to fend it off, right? And so it's very important for us to use some of these things that these nonverbal cues, these ways that we are able to develop relationships through our nonverbal gestures, through the way that we dress, through the visual cues that say, I am who I say I am, so that we can build these strong relationships faster and show people that we're reliable when we don't have the opportunity like we used to be able to meet them in a sort of a neutral space, like in a meeting room or in a coffee shop or something like that. Right now we're confined in our little frames here. And so it's very important for us to be able to demonstrate how people can trust us through our visual elements that show up. Yeah.
And of course, as we were saying earlier, this is now a window onto our own private environment. And
Yes.
Carol was saying to me earlier today that we had a video conference last week with a lady in the States who's obviously also a lawyer, and what Carol was doing was looking at her books to see which books that she had on her bookshelf, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, well, and I heard someone mention earlier, making sure that the things that you have in your background are maybe not giving too many visual cues about who you are, especially if you're needing to protect the privacy of clients or protect the privacy of your, certain family members. You want to be careful that you're aware of what is behind you. But we can use these as opportunities so that people can pick up on these cues and make decisions based on what they see. Do I look super messy and disorganized if I color coordinate my books? Probably not. I might look a little OCD, but I would rather err on that side than the other. Earlier we heard from Donald, who introduced, the entire conference. And as he was speaking, he was controlling his environment behind him. He had the green screen and he had the logo behind him, which we can trust that. That's the logo. He is representing the organization. He definitely standing up in front of everyone for in person. And I thought this is a great example of someone who is doing exactly what they need to be doing, which is, this is who I am. In this capacity, I'm representing this organization, and this is the way that I present myself to you. And that is one of the most important things that we can do is, we want to make other people feel comfortable. And part of making other people feel comfortable is that you are who you say you are. You're showing up in alignment with the kind of person that you portray yourself to be. So if I, portray myself to be someone who is super organized, trustworthy, dependable, and you're trying to establish whether or not, you can invest in me or we're going to build this relationship further. If I have chaos behind me, then there's something about that. You may say, yeah, it's strange times, but there's a little bit of you that is going to say, I don't know, does this person have their life together? Can I really trust to build this relationship? And certainly we want to practice grace with others when we're in this situation where we look where others may be reporting from home, turning into meetings from home where they're not used to doing so. But listen, a lot of us are a month in on this. And so, how long can we ride on that? And by the way, video communication isn't going anywhere. We may have Zoom fatigue, but, and you can turn off your camera for one video conference call, but how long can you do that, right? We have to show up professionally. We have to put our best foot forward if we really want to build solid relationships using the tools we have available to us. So there are a few ways that we can do this. We can adjust our camera to make sure that the camera isn't looking up our noses. We've heard a lot of this, from people talking about how to look good on camera. We can be aware of our lighting. So I have a very bright window over here, but I have drapes over that, and I've set up 3-point lighting. You could use your lamps that you have at home, but situate it so that it lights up your face so people can read your expressions and have a better idea about what some of those nonverbal cues are. When we think about sound, how well are we slowing down so that people can understand us? Should we have a microphone in? If we have a problem with, a lot of us with the open layouts in modern homes, we don't have as much cushioning for sound. So it's important if you have a very echoey room that's more open, if you're, in one of those situations, that you use headphones or earbuds so that you don't have the echo that's radiating back into everyone else's ears. Visual cues that you want to be thinking about would be things like the bookshelf. What does my background look like? How am I showing up on screen? If you have a green screen, not wearing green so that you're the floating head and hands. And, yes, taking stock of what you look like before you show up online. Some of us are still chasing kids around the house that aren't usually home during the day and things like that. And of course, those things can happen, but it's worthwhile to have a mirror or something close by so that you can just take a quick look before you show up online. You know, look at the preview panel, look at your preferences setting in Zoom, and check to see what you look like before you jump on, so that you can put things in place. Because if you look rattled, if you look a little unkempt, people, I think these days people will give you a little bit of a pass, but it might create a hurdle that you don't want to have.
And of course, your attitude, and you talked about how you need your visual cues, but and the trust, but you need to be looking into the eyes of the person that you're talking to, because that's what we would do in a normal meeting, in a normal face to face.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, how are we relating? How are we connecting right now? And actually, this is a really great point to test something out. So those of you who are watching, I would be curious to hear, what is the thing that makes you feel most awkward when you join these video teleconferences? When you're jumping on Zoom, when you're going into a meeting, what is it that makes you feel most awkward? And I wrote this out so that we have our little, what makes you feel most awkward? If you can type into the chat box, I'd be very curious to see, because you know, I think a lot of times we end up in these conversations, and there might be people who are around, and I don't know if they can type. Can they type in? Is anyone brave enough to do this?
There's a Q&A here, definitely.
Yes. Q&A. I don't know. I threw them off. I didn't warn them I was going to do it.
I'll tell you one of the things that I find, not necessarily me being awkward, but what I find irritating is if somebody is obviously, you know, texting over here, listening
Yes.
to what we're talking about, and he's busy doing something else over here, or typing on his keypad so that I can hear the typing, David.
It's so true. And you know, I want to say something. I'm going to speak to this, but Sean was over here saying that touching my face in today's world. Oh yes, very mindful of that. My face always develops an itch, and I don't want to rub my nose or my eyes. Wearing the wrong clothing for meetings. Yes. Awkward when first connecting and not knowing who else is on the call. How and when do you let people know that you're present? Yes. And then noticing that other people aren't paying attention and getting caught. It's so true. And it's so easy to do. We are surrounded by screens, and, you know, somebody's talking and you feel like nobody's really paying attention to you right now. Maybe somebody says something that you think, oh, is that true? Let me Google that really fast. And you go over, and it can be innocent. What's my next meeting and when does it start? But instead of being around a table where you might or might not be able to, you know, slyly check your phone or discreetly check your smartwatch, people are coming onto their screens and they're typing, right? And they're getting caught, or we're hearing it and clearly not paying attention. And you do not want to be the person that is caught doing that. So a couple of things. One, when you're present, be fully present. This is something we really need to try to do on a just day to day, even if we're not talking about video conference calls. On a day-to-day basis, when we show up for something, we need to show up for something. We need to show up for the other people, and we need to be present so that we can actually, you know, take up on and recognize those opportunities as they're presented, or the ideas where we can contribute, or the learning that we need to take in. Why are we here if we're not going to actually be present, right? So we need to do that. At the very least, we need to do it so that we show respect for the other people whom are on the call. And, you know, usually that's because we want to impress or create relationships with those other people. What kind of relationship are you creating if you're caught not paying attention? It's terrible. It's happened to all of us, but we really need to strive not to do that, and just show that respect.
There's another question here from Joe that's saying, are there any certain colours or types of clothes that appear better? And I think there definitely are.
Oh, yes,
Right,
yes, yes,
you
yes.
check.
So, okay, so as a makeup artist, what I would do, and by the way, I was hired by the National Press Club to be one of their primary makeup artists, which I totally did this on the side, but it was fascinating. I would talk with Alan Greenspan, Bill Nye the Science Guy, all kinds of people who would come in. And the two main things that you always want to do, male, female, no matter who it is going to be on camera, is you want to cut the red and you want to reduce the shine. So cameras, video cameras, they are going to reflect out any light that they're picking up on your face. So if you tend to perspire on your upper lip, or, you know, some people right here underneath their eyes or on their foreheads, you need to be aware of that because it can make you appear nervous. It can make you, you know, look unsettled. So you would want to either use a thin mattifier so that you can cut the shine like that, or just a powder, or just blot with a tissue before you go on camera. For colors, almost universally, some shade of blue will help you cut red out of your face. So a lot of people, as they speak, I'm one of them, it will show redness will creep up and will take over my whole being because, you know, maybe we get warm under the lights, maybe we get nervous, and that redness comes out. But if you wear blue, then that will cut that redness. Colors that are neutral that can show up okay, like black. I wear black all the time, but I really tend to wear something like a dark navy when I'm going to be on a video call, because the dark navy translates better through the camera, and it will again offer just enough of a blue tone to cut any redness that's in your face. So some of these things you can actually use for headshots and things like that too. What do we have over here?
When
When
people
people are not on time for the meeting, yes, that's frustrating too. I will also tell you that you can learn a lot by watching what your local television newscasters wear, what people wear. You'll notice lots of solid colors. You avoid patterns for more than one reason. One obvious reason is there's this moire effect, which can cause, you know, certain stripes and patterns to look like they're moving, right? Constant movement, and that's a little distracting and disturbing on camera. But another thing that happens is that it can make you appear dated very quickly. So if you're going to end up repurposing a video or something for later, it can be something that dates a picture or an image. And then on top of all of that, if you wear a pattern, it can distract from your overall conversation. People's eye will get drawn into that pattern. That's another thing about us as human beings who look at things visually, is we look for patterns. We learn from patterns. So that can actually distract from the message that you're trying to share.
I think one of the things that is unusual for us all is that we are seeing ourselves, and we don't take mirrors into meetings normally, but now that we're on screen, we do see ourselves. So you think, oh, look, that bit of hair there. Mind you, I read an article this morning actually in one of the newspapers here that said, if you thought there was a problem getting toilet paper, just wait until 26 million women all try to get a hairdressing appointment, because this is going to be a big issue coming out of this. So
Yes.
we are very conscious of ourselves, and I've seen people in video conferences, you know, checking themselves and making sure that they look okay. And of course, that can be very distracting. So I think whatever we're doing, we have to think about, even using our hands, we have to be thinking about how distracting that might be for people in a meeting like this, in a Zoom meeting like this.
Yeah, there's a delicate dance that we have to do, because for one, you know, one thing that we want to be aware of is that we don't want to not use our hands, because if we don't use our hands, we end up like this the whole time and it can be stilted. Another thing is, I mean, this is a really great opportunity to be very aware of your nonverbals and to work on that, because these are skills that whether we're on camera or not, it's worthwhile to improve upon, so that when we're meeting with people, we want to pay attention, we want to look into their eye, we want to be aware of not being distracted, we want to put our best foot forward, and present things in a way where people will trust us and understand. But I mean, everything from like a coffee cup that's in your picture. And this is association chat. This is a podcast that I have. And, if I'm talking to someone who knows I'm affiliated with this podcast, yeah, I've got things pulled together, and those visual trust cues are going to help that connection be made. But yeah, you don't want to do this the whole time. You don't want to be distracted. Like, what am I communicating? I think it's very important to always come back to it when in doubt, smile, take a breath, and focus more on what the other person is doing or saying rather than worrying so much about, are they judging me? How does my hair look? Because if we put a little preparation ahead of time into our surroundings so that we can be as comfortable as possible, things could happen. Our spouse could, obviously, no matter how prepared you are, a spouse could come out of the shower and change everything. I don't know. I have a dog that right now is not in my office, usually parks herself right underneath my desk during the day, but didn't want to be interrupted. And I mean, she could be scratching at the door if my daughter releases her. I don't know. But if we practice grace, we accept what happens. If that were to happen, I would laugh about it. I would go to my door, let the dog in, and then we would proceed. And remember that, I mean, ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to better connect with people. We're trying to say, you can trust me. I am who I say I am. I want to know more about you. I want to find out how we can, move somewhere to, not move somewhere together, but achieve a common goal. And if we can do that, if we can better connect, if we can build those relationships, then we win. And so make eye contact, smile when appropriate, nod to show when you're listening, and be thinking about how you can make that other person feel like the most important person in the Zoom call. Like, Penny, you are so important to me right now.
And you to me.
Aww.
That was great. Thank you very much indeed. And I know I've certainly got to get my lighting sorted out in this room, but and that you've reminded me that of a couple of times, so I really must do that. But thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all our speakers today, Jeff, Dan, Carol, David, and I'm going to hand over now to Alessa, I think, who is going to take us on to the next session. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Penny. We really enjoyed all of those talks. They were all very interesting and some great points. And I sat here the whole time Kiki was talking and thought, what can I do differently or better? And luckily, I had my little makeup bag that I have in my purse. I did blot my nose before I came back on screen. So appreciate those tips and ideas. We thank everyone a lot. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break now as Penny's group departs, and in 10 minutes time, which it looks like it's 12:17, so we'll say 12:30, we'll come back, so 13 minutes. We'll come back with Damien Kavanaugh. Thanks, everyone.